Good morning, everybody. My name is Sharon Rich. I'm the Senior Trust Advisor with AGID. Welcome to our presentation today on what's the difference between special needs trust, understanding trust options. We're going to go over mostly special needs trust today and a little bit about the differences between revocable and irrevocable trust, so you can kind of get the lingo down and hopefully get a better understanding of when someone talks about trust, what they might be talking about. I'm going to share my screen now. So everyone should be able to see the presentation now. And I wanted to let everyone know that we are recording this presentation. Afterwards, Golda will be sending you an email, and it'll contain the copy of the PDF presentation, and as well as a link to look at it again live, and also a certificate of attendance. If you're a guardian, we'll be submitting credits for you for continuing ed, and we also have, this program approved for continuing ed for attorneys and waiver support coordinators. So if you need anything from us, feel free to reach out, but give us about a week or so to get everything out to you. We do have quite a few people on the call today, so I will ask you to put your questions into chat, and at the end, I'll leave a little bit of time for questions and answers. So we do have a lot of material today. Our primary business at AGID is managing special needs trusts. So we live and breathe this type of thing all of the time. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. We're going to first do a summary of what's a revocable trust versus an irrevocable trust. Then we're going to go into the different types of special needs trust. What are they? Who can really benefit from a special needs trust? And go through some examples of first-party trust, third-party trust, and talk a little bit then about the responsibilities of a trustee, who you might consider serving as a trustee. Some trusts have special restrictions on, who can serve as a trustee also. And, in summary, like when to use a special needs trust. I am not an attorney, so I want to make sure that everybody understands this presentation is for educational purposes only. It's not intended to provide legal advice. So attorneys will be able to advise you on any real, complicated or detailed questions you may have about the trust. This presentation is pretty technical, so just bear with me, and hopefully, you'll have a copy of this at the end that will be a reference guide for you. So on a revocable trust, that is a trust that can be modified or amended or terminated by the person that created it or the grantor. It's often used to avoid probate. So you might have, like my mother created a revocable trust while she was living, and she titled all of her assets into the revocable trust, her investable assets, her checking account, savings account, not the IRAs or the 401ks, that kind of thing. But what that does is it helps to make for a smooth transition if, like, she becomes not able to manage her affairs. The person that's named as a successor trustee in that revocable trust can take over, right away or per the terms of the trust. Sometimes in a revocable trust, it might say you need 2 doctor's letters, that kinds of things. But it makes it very easy for administration. And sometimes you don't even need to open a probate estate when someone has everything titled in the name of their own revocable trust. contrary to an irrevocable trust. This is a trust that cannot be modified or amended or terminated. Generally, we think of the irrevocable can't be changed. There are there is a law in Florida that, under certain circumstances, you can get some of the beneficiaries of the trust to sign off on a modification of a trust. But generally, we think of irrevocable trust as can't be changed, okay, or terminated. The grantor of the trust is basically giving up all the rights of ownership when they put the money into the trust. It's often used for tax benefits, creditor protection, or for protecting government benefits in the case of a special needs trust. So when the tax laws were different and we could only keep like $600,000 way back when without federal estate taxes, a lot of people were doing revocable trusts, which then turned into an irrevocable trust upon their death for tax purposes. You might also hear the term living trust or inter vivos trust. What that means is it's a trust that gets established during the grantor's lifetime. So, if I set up a trust during my lifetime, it's an inter vivos trust. It could be revocable or irrevocable. So I could set up a trust right now that is irrevocable. That's still called an inter vivos trust because I set it up during my lifetime. And then you'll hear the term testamentary trust. That is really a trust that's funded after your death. So if I have a will and I say in my will that I leave, 1/3 of my estate in trust for disabled Johnny, that's a testamentary trust that I've created under my will. It becomes, it's always irrevocable, so that what I say when I'm living about that trust, that those terms can't be changed. And that can also be under your revocable trust. So in my example, my mom sets up a revocable trust upon her death. She says, I want all of my funds to be held in further trust for, Sharon. Okay. That's a testamentary trust that gets created under her revocable trust. Okay. So these are just terms for different types of trust. The person that creates the trust, signs the trust document, is called the grantor, or the trustor, or the settlor. So you'll see different terminology used sometimes. It's generally their funds, not always, that are being put into the trust. The beneficiary is the one that's receiving the current benefit from the trust, whose benefit is the trust for. The trustee is the person or corporation or company that is named to act in a fiduciary manner and manage the trust. So the trustee is managing the trust. They're bound by fiduciary laws to make sure they are managing the trust in the best interest of the beneficiaries. The final remainder beneficiary, or the heirs, or the remainder men, different terminology, can be used for the people that will receive the funds after the death of the current beneficiary. So we've got your current beneficiary, and then we've got the final remainder beneficiaries. Okay. I want to talk about a special needs trust. What does that really mean? This is just a special type of a trust designed to protect quality of life for an individual with disabilities. And this can include seniors sometimes, without causing the loss of government benefits like Medicaid and SSI. So when you put money into a special needs trust, the government doesn't count it. So it's a way to, get funds, make funds available for someone with a disability without interfering with their government benefits. Distributions in a special needs trust are structured so that they supplement the public benefits. In other words, if a public benefit like Medicaid is going to cover something, the trust is written so that the trust doesn't pay for that. It pays for other things than what the government benefits typically pay for. You can hold cash in a special needs trust, personal property, real property can be held. I get that question, can you put a house into a special needs trust? You can, whether that's appropriate or something you want to do. It's something that you have to have an evaluation done, a trust can also hold life insurance proceeds. So you can actually have a life insurance policy and the beneficiary can be a special needs trust. That's often done to help fund a special needs trust. So what are the advantages? Again, like I said, funds in the trust don't count as beneficiaries' resources. Some trusts can also protect income, special needs trust. You can reduce countable income for Medicaid purposes with some of the trust. The funding of the trust is exempt from the 5-year Medicaid look back. So the special needs trust has special language in it, and it is not going to be counted as a gift. It's not going to be, you're not going to have to worry about any kind of look back period. As soon as you put money into the trust is when you can really apply for Medicaid. There's no Medicaid spend down. So in other words, you don't have to spend down your money to qualify for benefits or keep your benefits. You can preserve money. The money lasts longer for the individual, extends the life of the ability to stay in the community, potential for greater independence because the persons with disability can keep the government benefit and now they have additional funds to support their independence. A trust also is beneficial because it can provide management for investments, administration, distribution guidance for the disabled individual. So, there's lots of reasons for doing the trust and lots of benefits. It's really all about improving the quality of life for our loved ones. And this is all, of course, assuming that the trust stays in compliance with all the rules. We here at AGED deal with a lot of different types of special needs trust. The lady on the left looking at her medications here is a senior who cannot afford her medications and her copays. It's very expensive now when we go to the doctor. Medicare doesn't cover everything. Medications can be very expensive. When you're living on a fixed income and spending $300-400 a month in medications or more, that can really be a drain on your budget. So we very often use a pooled special needs trust to help individuals qualify for medical Medicaid programs that can reduce these out-of-pocket costs. Your individual who can no longer work because of a disability. This is someone generally that is under the age of 65, has had something happen in their life and they're unable to work. Maybe they got into a car accident or they have some kind of medical condition now that prevents them from working. They apply to Social Security to say, I can no longer work. And if they get put on SSI or SSDI government benefits. If you'd like to know more about those benefits, I do have some videos on our website that talk about the different disability benefits. And I'm happy to be a resource for people on that. Those types of people very often are on Medicaid, and they may get an inheritance. They may sell a home or something like that, and they come into money. That's where a special needs trust can really help those people, because, or a settlement, like a personal injury type settlement. In order for them to keep their government benefits, now they need a special needs trust for that money. So we deal with a lot of attorneys that are doing Medicaid planning for older people or anyone needing to go into a nursing home. Someone may have $50,000 left. Well, that's not going to last very long. So there are trusts. A full trust is one of the options for qualifying for Medicaid without having to spend down your assets to the $2,000 limit. So the government says basically you can't have more than $2,000 in countable resources to qualify for Medicaid for a nursing home. So this is a special needs trust is sometimes used to help people be able to keep some of the money they have and qualify for Medicaid. We're going to go through an example on that. Assisted living, I get calls all the time for people trying to afford going into an assisted living. Medicaid does have a program for that. It pays maybe up to $1,400 a month. And the problem is there's a waiting list for that program, but some people get on it. And so, again, you may need a special needs trust if they have too much money. Special needs trusts are also used for your developmentally disabled individuals, whether children or adults, to help them keep government benefits. And maybe this is a lot of times where a third party special needs trust may come in. I'll talk about that a little bit more. So in the special needs arena, there are what we call first party trust and third party trust. First party means that the trust is being funded with the disabled beneficiary's own money. So it's their money going into the trust. It can be, there's different types. I'm going to go through those, the D4A, D4B, and D4C first party trusts. Third party trusts are funded with somebody else's money. It could be a parent's money, a grandparent's money, a friend. They're funding a trust for an individual with disabilities, and it is not the beneficiary's money. And you cannot commingle beneficiary's money with somebody else's money because the rules are different. The biggest difference between the first and the third party trust is that upon the death of the beneficiary, in a third party trust, you do not have to pay Medicaid back any funds because it was never the disabled beneficiary's money. In a first party trust, one of the rules is when the disabled person dies, you have to pay Medicaid back to the extent Medicaid spent money on them. And then it can go to heirs or as the trust documents allow, okay? In a third-party trust, there are different types of third-party trusts. There can be what we call a standalone trust. So I could go to an attorney, let's say I had a disabled child, and say, I want to create a trust now. I'm living, I want to create a special needs trust for my disabled child, and I want to start funding it now. Or, my parents want to fund that trust. So you can have a standalone document, or I could say in my will or in my revocable trust, I want to leave my funds in, for disabled Johnny in trust. Okay, that'd be through my will, and that'd be like a testamentary trust. Okay, so there's different type ways to create these trusts. This is a nice chart that kind of summarizes, see the three first party trusts on the left-hand side here, and then on the right-hand side is the third party trust. This just is a nice snapshot that shows you kind of some of the different rules about what can go in, what can't go into the different trusts. I'm not going to go over all of these. We do have some examples as we go through, and I believe this slide is at the end also. So the first one I'm going to talk about is one that was on the left hand side of that chart. This is called this is a first party self-settled trust. I've already talked about some of this. It's funded with the beneficiary's own assets. It can be, beneficiary could get a gift from somebody. They could get an inheritance, a settlement. It could be lifetime savings. Again, we talked about the payback provision and the three types of first party trust we're going to go into now. So the D4A is also called a disability trust. One of the main rules about this is that you have to be under 65 when the trust is established. So a disabled person may, get into a car accident, for instance, can't work anymore, and now they've gone on Medicaid, and they're going to now get a personal injury settlement. This type of trust is done very often for that. So that settlement money is the disabled beneficiary's money. They can create the trust, or someone else for them with legal authority can create it. Sometimes it's an inheritance. We get a lot of calls about people already on Medicaid and now they get an inheritance. So that can happen too. In this type of trust, the trustee can pay for services and expenses not covered by the government benefits. We have sole benefit rules, which mean anything that goes out of the trust has to be for the sole benefit of the disabled beneficiary. Upon the death, you must pay Medicaid back, and then any money can go to the heirs as stated in the trust document. This is a standalone individual trust document. Who can be the trustee? Well, you can have an individual, not the beneficiary, but you can have an individual named, a corporation, or a nonprofit organization can serve as a trustee under this type of trust. Who's most appropriate is a whole nother question to be determined on, the circumstances. And I have a couple of slides in the back to talk about that. Here's an example of somebody that might need a D4A disability trust. We have Patricia, who was a housekeeper, no children, and at 40, she got into a bad car accident, had a slight brain injury, lots of broken back, arm, punctured lung. She became depressed. She applied to Social Security because she had a little bit of a work record, but not a lot. She got a combination of SSDI and SSI, $841 a month. Patricia had no savings. So how is she going to, pay for her care now that she can no longer work? She's going to have home care needs, doctor's visits, procedures, medications, right? So she's going to have Medicare and Medicaid, but is that going to cover everything that she needs? She's still got all of her living expenses. She's only allowed to have $2,000 in assets for Medicaid. Patricia is getting a personal injury settlement of $400,000. So if she just took that money, she's going to lose her Medicaid. By putting it into a special needs trust, she can now keep her Medicaid to help extend the life of her money. That's going to help keep her medication costs down and cover all of the doctor's visits and things that she needs. Okay, so it's going to really help her be able to afford the things that she needs. Now we're going to a D4B qualified income trust. This is a QIT. Some of you may have heard that term before, generally used in the context of nursing home. One thing to keep in mind is the only thing you can put into a QIT is income. So we're not talking about, you can't put your savings into this to qualify for Medicaid. This is used if you're over the income limit for Medicaid, generally nursing home. The income limit for nursing home is like a little bit over $2,500 a month. So somebody might have $3,000-$4,000 and they need to go into a nursing home. That income's not enough to qualify, to pay private pay. The average cost in a nursing home is over $10,000 now a month in Florida. Okay, so this is a way to let someone qualify for Medicaid and they're over the income limit. You put your money into the QIT trust and what can you pay out of it? Patient responsibility to the nursing home, the amount that you owe to the nursing home. Unreimbursed medical expenses can be also paid out of a QIT account. Spousal allowance gets a little bit complicated, but basically you can pay medical expenses out of a qualified income trust. Upon death, the money in the trust is going to go back to Medicaid. And if you don't send it, they're going to write you a letter because the Medicaid Recovery Unit keeps track of death notices, and they're going to ask you to send the money back to them. Okay, so who can establish a QIT? The person, the beneficiary themselves, the spouse of a beneficiary, even without a power of attorney, can establish a QIT, or someone with a power of attorney or the court. Trustees can be individuals, professionals, and nonprofits. So here's an example of Robert, who's 82. He had a stroke and fell. He goes to rehab and it's been determined he's not safe to go back home. He has to go into skilled nursing. But Robert has Social Security and pension income totaling $4,000 a month. Now that's over the limit, the income limit. He also has savings of $10,000, which is over the limit for Medicaid. So Robert decides he's going to prepay for his funeral expenses, which is a great idea. He's going to kind of buy an expensive funeral plan and get his savings down to $1,000. So he's now got his assets below the $2,000 limit, but his income is still too high to qualify for Medicaid. So he is going to go to an attorney, get the QIT document drafted. His daughter is power of attorney. The daughter becomes the trustee of the qualified income trust. She goes down to the bank with the trust document and opens up a bank account in the name of the trust. And then she has to transfer Robert's income into the QIT every month. So Robert's income continues to go into his checking account, and she's going to transfer, in my example, everything except $130 a month into the qualified income trust. The reason is you can keep $130 for your personal needs. Okay. Then she's going to pay the facility the $38.70. So basically, when you go into a nursing home, you have to give your income less $130 to the nursing home. So she's going to transfer $38.70 into the QIT and pay the nursing home out of the QIT. Okay. Now he's still got a house. How is he going to pay for the house expenses? Well, that's a problem sometimes when this happens. If he sells a house, what's he going to do with the fund? He cannot put it into the QIT. So there's other options for Robert for proceeds from the house. Okay. One of the options would be a pooled trust for Robert. Now I'm going to talk about the pooled trust. The concept of a pooled trust is there's a master trust document that's already signed. It has all the legal language in it that says, what the trust can do. The funds may be pooled together for investment purposes in a pooled trust. But each individual has to have their own individual beneficiary account, and that's created via a joiner agreement. So Aged manages lots of pooled trust accounts. We have our Aged Master Trust, and when someone wants to join into it, they sign a joiner agreement. That's a fill in the blank, name, address, who's going to be their beneficiary, their advocate. They can be their own, they can name somebody else. And then what happens after their death? It's all written into the joiner agreement. One of the federal rules is that a nonprofit organization has to be the trustee of a pooled trust. So there are 10 to 12 or so pooled trust companies in the state of Florida, and there's more throughout the country. One of the differences in the pooled trust is that income and or assets can be transferred into the trust. So some people don't even realize that. So the pooled trust can be used like a QIT, but you can also put assets into it. You can do a pooled trust any age for Medicaid in Florida, okay? However, a lot of people don't realize this, even some attorneys. If you're on SSI benefits, supplemental security income, and you want to do a pooled trust and you're 65 or older, Social Security may apply a penalty period up to 3 years for funding the trust. That gets a little complicated, but we have to be careful when we have an SSI beneficiary that's 65 or older. Okay. One of the rules also is you have to be disabled. What does that mean? In accordance with Social Security guidelines, it means you can't go back to work full time for at least 12 months in substantial gainful activity. So the clients in a pooled trust, the beneficiaries, if they're under 65, they're on SSI or SSDI benefits, or if they're 65 or older, a disability determination has to be done by the government. Okay, so that means you're providing medical records to substantiate the fact that you're unable to work. Okay, so if someone comes to me and they're, 68 years old, they're just getting on Medicare or whatever, and they go, well, I want to use a pooled trust to reduce my medication costs, and I'm still working, I'm not going to be able to help them because they're not meeting the definition of being disabled. It's really truly for people that have a lot of medical conditions and need help. Okay, what can the money be used for in the trust? It can be used to pay for things the government benefits don't pay for. Right? Sole benefit, anything we pay for out of a pooled trust has to be for the sole benefit of that beneficiary. At death, each pooled trust company is a little bit different, but one of the main rules is if the money is not retained by the trust, you have to pay Medicaid back before any money goes to heirs. So there's a payback provision. It's a first party trust. Beneficiary's money goes in at death. We're not going to give the money to the heirs unless we pay Medicaid back first. Okay, one of the rules. That's kind of why the government allows you to do this. And here's all the different rules. We got federal rules to follow, Social Security rules, and we have Medicaid rules. And I'm not going to read this, but this basically says pooled trust is allowed for disabled individuals to place assets and or income into the trust to qualify for Medicaid. Okay. So here's an example of what happens to the money after death. In the aged pooled trust, and again, I can't speak for other pool trust companies, there are two options. 100% can be retained by Agent, the nonprofit organization, as surplus trust property. We can use that to create for other disabled persons, okay? Whether that means setting up a trust for another disabled person, that's one thing that we allow. Have to fill out certain documents for that to happen. Or, the nonprofit can use it to help the disabled community, equipment, medication, services, etc. Basically you're funding your 501c3 mission. One of the things that Agent does with its money is also to provide funding for professional guardianship services so that guardians can get paid for their pro bono cases. Just one thing we do with our fund. So they're allowed to have the trust retain 100%, or in our case, we allow 10% retention by Agent, then pay back to Medicaid, and then then it can go to heirs as stated in the joiner agreement. So, like I said, each pool trust company is a little bit different. Some will just allow it to go back to the estate, some allow heirs, some don't. Okay, so what do we do with the money in the trust? Well, we pay for dental expenses sometimes. They're not covered by the government benefits. Unfortunately, Medicare and Medicaid still do not provide sufficient benefits, for dental. If someone needs additional therapy and rehab that's not covered, then we can pay that. We pay transportation, caregivers, companions, guardianship, care management. We pay legal bills out of our trust. If someone still has a house and they put money in the pool trust, we can pay for that house. We can pay a cell phone, a vehicle. We purchase cars out of our pool trust a lot of times. Some travel can be paid for. We buy computers, television, furniture, pets. We pay for veterinarian bills, pet needs, etc. Food and shelter generally can be paid for out of the trust. We pay rent, mortgages, electric, but if someone's on SSI, then we do have to be careful about those things. Special rules apply. Okay, the one thing you cannot do out of a special needs trust is to give money to the beneficiary, because that's considered income. So I can't just, write a check or transfer money to my beneficiary's checking account. We may have a caregiver that has to buy something for the beneficiary. We can reimburse the caregiver, for something they pay. We can pay a credit card bill for a beneficiary directly to the credit card company, but we cannot write a check to the beneficiary. I've got a couple slides here, and I'm going to go through these quickly. QMB is the medical benefit that I alluded to earlier. We do a lot of pool trust to help individuals. This is medical Medicaid. You've got Medicare, and now you're going to get Medicaid basically as a supplement. Reduces your medication cost and pays for your co-pays when you go to the doctors and the hospitals. Basically, you have zero co-pays. If you need a back surgery, if you need an MRI test, you're not going to have to pay. So we do a lot of trust for people to reduce their countable income or assets to qualify for these benefits. This is an example of Andy, who's diabetic in the donut hole, can't afford his back surgery. His assets and income are too high to qualify, so he's going to set up a pool trust, transfer the overage. The limit for QMB for Medicaid purposes is like $8,400, so not the same as nursing home. So he's going to keep $6,000 in his checking. He's going to transfer $14,000 into the trust, and then reduce his countable income by putting $700 into the trust every month. This allows him to qualify, and his insulin goes down to $3.95. So he's saving almost $300 a month just on his insulin. He can now afford his back surgery. No copays for the doctors and the hospitals. And the government pays his Part B premium. So he gets 170 back, and Social Security check goes up. He's paying, if he uses Agent, our trustee fee is $115 to do that. So he's actually making $55 a month by doing the trust, and he gets all his benefits. So it's a win-win. This is a great chart to just think about how a pooled trust works. Someone's got their income and assets in their bank account. They're going to put the overage into the trust, and now the trust is going to pay bills for them. I want to go over third-party trust. So that was all beneficiaries' money going into the trust. Now we got a third-party trust funded with money from grandparents, parents, friends, etc. Again, we've talked about the different types. Testamentary, created under your own will. A standalone trust document. There's no Medicaid payback required at the death because it's somebody else's money going into the trust. And you have a variety of people, individuals, professionals, sometimes family members can be named under these third-party trusts. Do they want to? Is that appropriate? Well, maybe, maybe not. So here's an example of Susan, who is widowed with 3 children, and one child is bipolar schizophrenic and on SSI benefits. In her last will and testament, she leaves 50% to each non-disabled child. She creates a third-party supplemental trust during her lifetime for her disabled child, and she buys a single premium life insurance policy naming the third-party trust, special needs trust, as the beneficiary. So when Susan passes away, those life insurance proceeds are now put into that special needs, supplemental needs trust for her disabled child. And so now the disabled child can be taken care of with her needs. Big question about who should be that trustee. That's something you have to really think about. This is just a slide on a lot of the different Medicaid programs for the aged and disabled. I have other presentations about different Medicaid programs. Here's the chart on all the different limits for income and assets, resources, accountable resources. A house, as long as it's less than $636,000 in equity, does not count, and 1 car. Just about everything else you can get your hands on as far as money goes counts. I had this chart at the beginning, so this is just kind of a summary. We talked about the 3 different types of first-party special needs trust, and we talked about the third-party trust. So for thought process, why would we might want to use a special needs trust? You want to leave money to a person with disabilities. Please put it in trust. Don't leave it to them outright, because now it can disqualify them from benefits or make them have to do some planning immediately so they won't lose their benefits. On Medicaid, receive money. We get it all the time. I've just sold my home. I'm on benefits. I got an inheritance I didn't know about, or I've got a settlement coming to me and I'm on Medicaid. Pooled first-party trust is often used in those cases. Can't afford their meds, can't afford their doctors, entering a nursing home. All first-party special needs trusts can be used in those cases, or at home and get off the wait list for assisted living. I have a couple examples I'm just going to kind of speed through. This is Harry, who's going into a nursing home. This is really why you want to think about not spending down. He's got $30,000 and he's over the income limit. If he goes into a nursing home, his money is going to last less than 4 months. Gone. Private pay, gone. 3 to 4 months. By doing a pooled trust, he's now going to run his excess income into the trust. We're going to pay the nursing home, and he's going to put his assets into the trust. He keeps $1,500 outside. He puts the rest in. This allows him to qualify for Medicaid for the skilled nursing facility. And the only thing he has to pay is his income, less $130. So now his money is going to last 8 years. Okay. So we have, extra things to pay for Harry in the nursing home. This is Mary, who's got the QMB. She needs QMB. Again, over the income and the asset limit, her money's going to run out in 3 years. By doing the trust, she's reducing her out-of-pocket medical expenses, which means now her income is sufficient to cover her bills, makes her money last indefinitely. So these, sometimes doing these trusts can really be life-changing for people, allows them to get the care they need and to make their money last longer. So just a couple things to think about when you're talking about who, what does a trustee do? They're the gatekeeper. They have to understand the trust document, and they need to carry out the instructions in the trust. If I make a trust for my disabled child, I want to make sure that, my wishes in the trust are going to be carried out. Big responsibility. They're going to decide on distributions. They need to understand special needs and government benefits and how that disabled person's benefits can affect the distributions. Taxes, got to file a tax return, accountings, and need to be done. Investments. So a trustee has all these fiduciary responsibilities, and they need to be objective and impartial. Okay. So sometimes, a family member is named to serve in like a third-party trust or a D4A trust. They have all these responsibilities. They can be a little bit daunting, especially if you're not, it's not your expertise. So what are your options? A trust company, a nonprofit trustee. Again, this is what, AGET does. But for pooled trust, it has to be a nonprofit. CPAs sometimes serve, lawyers, family members, friends, private social workers, care managers, professional guardians can be trustees, or sometimes the combination of the above. One of the things to consider is, what are the costs? What is the expertise of the individual or organization that you want to name? Will they be around? What's the longevity? We work on a team approach very often. Our clients have legal advisors. They may have their medical advisors, whether that's, a care manager or a family member. Very important to put a whole team of people around the beneficiary, financial advisors, trustees, caregivers. It's a whole team approach when you're trying to help someone with a disability. I've got resources here for you. The SSI related financial eligibility chart I had the chart in my presentation here. The program fact sheet talks about a lot of different programs, Medicaid programs. Applying for benefits is through the Access Florida website, and some other information. The Area Agency on Aging is a great resource in our county, Seminole, Orange, Brevard, Osceola. It's the Senior Resource Alliance. They have a lot of help for seniors and persons with disabilities. Don't hesitate to reach out to them. And I would like to thank you for attending. And this is our contact information. I will leave that up. And Golda, if you could put that into the chat for me also, if you haven't already done that. I'm going to go through some of the questions here on the chat. Got a question from Chris. Are people with any type of disabilities eligible for a special needs trust, or is eligibility upon specified disabilities? So the disability definition that we're looking for for a trust is the definition that Social Security uses. Is you're unable to work in substantial gainful employment for at least 12 months, or you're expected to, pass away within 12 months. I think what you're talking about is more like APD, Agency for Persons with Disabilities, has specific disabilities, and the government, to qualify for SSI, sometimes has these. And in fact, they just expanded their definition of automatic disability that they have. So, but for a trust, it's the inability to work in substantial gainful activity. Someone loved the slide. Can a pooled trust be used instead of a QIT? Yes, absolutely. We use a pooled trust a lot for income only. It can be used, so sometimes if it's nursing home and it's income only and there's no family to serve under a QIT, pooled trust makes a lot of sense. Or you've got your individual, like in my example with the medical benefits, is still living at home and just wants to reduce their medication and copay costs. We do a lot of trusts to help people get the medical Medicaid QMB and using the income only. But yes, it can be. Can any of these special needs trusts be used for in-home care? Yes, absolutely. The trust can pay for in-home care. We do that a lot. And the government, the Home and Community-Based Services Program, is a long-term care program, Medicaid program. If you're lucky enough to get off the waiting list and you're still at home, and you have too much in the way of assets or income, the trust can be used. I hope that answered your question. Aaron says, I may have missed this at the beginning, but will you be making this PowerPoint available to the attendees? Yes, we will. Golda will be sending an email out with the PowerPoint and a link to also watch the presentation. Okay, Golda, I see you already got that question answered. Thank you. And my email address, sharon@trustagent.org, is in the chat. So we still have 3 to 5 minutes. I'd like to open it up to questions. Are there any more questions anybody has that we can answer? I see some people I know on the call, so it's good to see you all. We like to be a resource, so please don't hesitate to call us at any time. You have a situation you're not sure about, you just want to run by, and we have a lot of resources. Even if we can't help you, we're happy to refer you out to someone that may be able to help. Great. Let's give it another minute, and thank you all so much, and I appreciate the kind comments. All righty. Well, thank you again, and look for the presentation email from Golda. And thank you very much.